Welcome everybody to the Social Dig, the greatest underrated show on the World Wide Web. I am your host, Mr. Rob G, and as always, we're going to be digging into the topics that keep you talking and the talk that keeps you thinking. It's been a little while since we did the last show, but guess what? We got our guy back in the building here, Mr. Mateo. How you doing, Mateo?
I'm doing good. Well, I'm doing good, my brother. Good to see you. Good to be back. Hello to everybody.
Yeah, good to have you back, man. It's been yeah, we missed you, man. We missed you over here at Social Dig, man. You know, we gotta have that back and forth conversation going on, man. So glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Definitely. And who do we have in the chat here so far? We got Magneticus stopping through. Magneticus, what's up, man?
Yeah,
thanks
welcome,
for joining
buddy.
us. We have a great show in store for you today. We did David Grusch part 1 the other day, and kind of, right after he broke the internet and came out and talked about his knowledge of crash retrievals stored by the U.S. government and also alien ET bodies. So I know you weren't here for that show, Mateo. How did you? I'm sure you caught it. How do you feel about it?
Oh no, we got a lot to talk about there. I know this is the main topic of the show tonight, so I'll save some of what I have to say. But yes, it was. We're living in interesting times, my friend, and there's a lot to unpack, and we'll do that some more. But no, you hit it good. You hit it early, and I like the points you brought up in that show, and we'll talk more about that and what's happened since.
Yeah, definitely. You know that. And let me just bring them up on the screen real quick. Magneticus in the building. Hey, we got also Maggie M10 in the building. Hey, Maggie, how you doing? Thanks for joining us today.
Excellent.
All right.
Yeah, hey, Maggie.
So, yeah, feeling good. We've been trying to raise the bar here at the Social Dig. So, we've been doing a lot of things on the back end to try to bring you the best show that we could possibly bring you. So what we're going to do is, actually, let me get some things set up here. We're going to take our time this time. We're going to take our time. Usually we rush right into it. We're going to take our time. Let me go ahead and fade the music out, and we can jump right into our disclosure news, guys. Disclosure news. So what we have here, we have a few topics to cover today. First of all, we have Las Vegas ET. You think the story's been beat to death. There's been a lot that happened, and then it was a hoax, and it wasn't a hoax. Then these guys are real, then they're not. Where's the video? Then the video surfaces. And then so it's like, where are we at with this? Now this story, Mateo, did you follow this? Have you followed it since it came out?
Oh yeah, thanks to you too, because I watched your review and also what has happened since. And yeah, it's been a wild ride there, and there are some interesting aspects and also some strange aspects and some questionable aspects. So I'm sure we'll get into it.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that people jumped on immediately was the fact that the meteor that was shown in the video, they pretty much said, oh, this meteor had nothing to do with the spaceship. And that statement could be true.
Yes.
The NASA did come out and say that they had calls from California all the way across to for sure to Nevada, stating that they saw this thing falling from the sky. So
yeah, it was very far away. We know that. Obviously, it didn't hit the ground. Otherwise, it would be a big issue. That's
right.
Meteors, especially bright ones, are very misleading. That was hundreds of miles away, and it was green because it's got a high nickel content.
Right.
So, hey, it was a coincidence, obviously, baby, and it wasn't the spaceship. So that's where
Now,
some of the doubt comes in, right? If something
so
100
so
miles away doesn't necessarily mean it was a spaceship that landed in their backyard.
so then, do you feel like it was? I almost feel like it shouldn't have been part of the story than the original story. So if the story didn't begin with this shot through the sky, then they saw this. So now that they have described or come out and said what this meteor was a meteor, and I've thought that pretty much the whole time it was definitely a meteor. But now that they've said we'll call it debunked that, now they try to say the rest of the story isn't credible. The family did disappear for a moment right after the initial reporting of this. Now, and we're going to talk about a couple of other things because most people may not know actually that this actually happened months before this was actually released. So it would appear to someone who didn't really look into it that this happened right after David Grusch comes out and makes his statement. However, this happened about 2 months prior to the David Grusch interview even happening. And there were some things that happened after that will kind of make you think about it. So apparently, the Las Vegas Police Department, there's a division of the Las Vegas Police Department called Homeland Security, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so they actually came out and ended up putting a camera on the family's roof. And there was an YouTuber, podcaster, and we'll actually show him in a minute, but he actually was the first person to go over there and interview the young man. And the young man actually, he walks up to him. He's filming. He walks up to the young man and asks him, if he's the guy, and wants to talk to him about the sighting. And the young man is kind of hesitant and says, "Wait a minute." He actually picks up his phone, calls someone, and it's on speakerphone, and you hear a lady say, "Get his license plate." Well, come to find out, the lady that was on the other end of that line was with the Las Vegas Police Department. So the family also stated that they had saw weird people driving around, maybe government types in vehicles around the neighborhood following the sighting. So a lot of people thought that this all happened after David Grusch. So they're like, yeah, of course, the camera was put up there because you're going to have all these people coming to the sighting and wanting to take pictures, and it's for their safety. But this all happened before anyone in the public was ever made aware of the incident. So kind of makes you think. I have a clip here that I want to play from the YouTuber who actually started investigating this, and he kind of just talks about why you should believe the story and why it actually may be true here. So let's check it out.
I'm going to tell you something. I met with the family extensively on the 27th, and then for a short time on the 19th when I went out there. And their story has been consistent on what they told me. Now, I'm going to say this. This 16-year-old kid, Angel, is getting slammed all over social media, okay? And because the family's Hispanic, they're getting a lot of threats and a lot of comments. And when I see him on my social media reference to this, I completely delete it. It's a disgrace. But as far as what they told me, and Angel's getting hammered, like I said, on social media, but people have to remember, 3 people saw this. Angel, his brother, I think, is a year younger than him, and his father. Angel called 911. The father got on 911 and said the same thing. I saw the creatures about 15, 20 minutes ago. And like I said, I'm an experienced investigator, full of 40 years investigative experience, and I did everything I could to see if I get Angel upset to the point where you say, this is all made up. But 3 family members saw this. And I want to say something briefly. I know we're short on time here. But when I was out at the residence on the 27th, and they were showing me where these things were, where they believe they saw them, and I was standing against a metal pole that was holding up like a carport, and the father, and I'm just a little over 6 feet, about 6 feet, 6'1", and he said, "That pole you're standing next to, it was taller than that pole." Now, I'm about 6'1". I looked up. That pole was about 8.5 feet. And Angel said, yeah, it was even taller than that. Now, they described what they described. And I tell people, I was not there that night. Neither were you. I have nothing to discount what this family said. I mean, it's a nice family. They could have thrown me off the property. They're a very nice family. And, to the point is this, okay? You have three people that said they saw a strange creature, and they described it. And people want evidence of that. Well, we don't have any evidence. He on that video that he showed on his YouTube channel, a lot of people are blowing things up. Even the Baltimore Post-Examiner blew up the picture. They were the first ones to show the photo of the impression on May 27th that Angel took that night when he said the police were in the backyard at 1:37. Baltimore Post-Examiner published the photograph. And then when I went back later on, Angel gave me the photograph of the two sergeants from the Northwest Area Command of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, who he said was about midnight on May 6th, who came back and talked to the father, because allegedly what he told me is the cop said the first two officers didn't do something right, okay? When I first met the family, it was on May 19th, and it was hard that day because they didn't trust me. That's when you saw that video clip that you just showed where he's talking to the female. He originally told me it was a journalist, and I didn't think it was a journalist, Ashley, because it was a speed dial, and journalists wouldn't pick up the phone. He told me. He wouldn't tell you who it was, listen,
right?
Doug,
he didn't tell you who it was on the phone?
Excuse me?
Did he tell you who it was on the phone eventually?
Yes, it was the female detective who came out with the family. There was a male and female after this incident, like days later, who came out and talked to them. After the first two officers were out there the morning of May 1st, the two patrol, and you all saw the video on that, the body camera video and all that, okay? The mother told me when I was there on May 19th that after the first two officers came up, a couple days later, two more cops came. And I believe she's talking about the LVMPD sergeants that I posted the picture on.
Okay,
from the
let me get to that, because I only have about 30 seconds left, but I need you to tell me about the photograph you took of what looked like cameras installed on the roof of the home, and those came, what, 2 weeks after the incident, and then suddenly we're gone a few days later. Is that the right story? And again, I'm a bit tight for time.
They were installed on May 19th in a lamppost in the rear yard of the family's home. They were installed by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, Homeland Security Division, that's run by Assistant Sheriff Sasha Larkin. The cameras were there when I saw them on May 19th, and they were pulled out 3 days before May 27th when I went back. And I have that confirmed from the family, and my police sources said those were definitely installed by the technical and surveillance squad that works for Homeland Security under the direction of Assistant Sheriff Sasha Larkin, and they pulled them. Now, I want to say something real quick. I know we're short on time here, okay? They pull those around 3 days before May 27th. That was the second podcast that I aired when I exposed those cameras, okay? Now, there's talk. The parents, I said, why did they put them in there? They said, they came to the house and said, we got permission from the owner. We want to put this on your property. Can we? It's for your protection in case people come. But you got to remember something, okay? This thing didn't go viral to June 7th. The cameras were uninstalled 3 days prior to May 27th.
Well, that's odd, Doug, because obviously if it goes viral, then I can understand harassment cameras. But before most people even knew about this family or this young man, I wouldn't imagine that no other harassment complaints get cameras like that. Doug, I have to cut it there, but the conversation's not over. I hope you'll come back.
Yes, because there's a lot more. One thing real quick. Don't discount that Ring camera that was not in the neighborhood of the house. That was somewhere else on another part of town. That's also being across social media.
Okay.
And I cannot verify where that location was. It definitely wasn't across the street from the home.
Okay, so it was another neighborhood, and we're still on verification and fact-checking on that.
That's right. I have no idea where that was. It could have been on the other side of Vegas.
He's continuing to investigate this. He's been on it since the beginning. Doug Papa, thank you for being on with us tonight. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television.
Yeah, so with that information right there, obviously all this happened prior to the story blowing up on the news and the public finding out about it. So what do you think about that? It's kind of weird that the police would be interacting or intervening like that. What do you think?
I guess I just get this impression that there are a lot of loose ends and a lot of things that don't add up here. Like the dates involved, they just reviewed at the end there. And what were the police trying to surveil, right? If people weren't harassing them yet, what were they looking for? Were they looking for the reoccurrence of the sighting? Police never do that. If somebody says they've seen some strange phenomenon, they never go and install cameras. There had to have been another motivation. I don't know. This is my opinion, of course. But it doesn't seem to add up, and I'm a little confused by all of that. Now, getting back to the meat of the case, were they fabricating this or not? I mean, the evidence does seem to support that they weren't. They saw something. And I don't know, Rob. It's just weird, and I don't know if we'll ever know. That's why I'm like, every time they unravel this, it seems like there's more things unearthed that lend to muddy the waters even further.
Right. And then it makes sense. So, with that being said, it makes sense why they're doubling down on the fact that this actually occurred, because when you put this other evidence along with the story and you have the knowledge of this all took place before it went public, then it just leaves you with a bunch of questions. So what we'll do, and actually for any of the viewers, you can see on the screen, we have a number now here at the Social Dig. It is a viewer call-in and message line. So right now, and this is for today's topic, or anytime you have any thoughts, concerns about the show, anything you want to let us know, you can go ahead and leave a message here. And for this show today, we will go ahead and play messages that are left regarding these topics or anything that you may have to add later in the show. So definitely put this number in your phone, and we'd love to have you come join the conversation. So with that being said, what I want to do, since we have the context there, and I know that on the last show, the viewers that did tune into the last show saw the actual edited ET video. It has a filter placed on it where you can where it shows something that was inside of the forklift. Now, if you go back to the original 911 call, so the description that the young man gives right then and there in the moment, Beans being in the backyard, 10 feet tall, big eyes, big mouth is what he said. Big glowing eyes is what he says, and a big mouth. So the video, and we will play it here again today just to put it in context so you can see what it was that was inside of the forklift. You tell me if you think these are ETs or not. It's very compelling. So let's check that out here.
Que cantis Paris le gallengue alla chorsi korai. Calmundarela me cancile variso. Kailo cherro que chili. Kailo cherro. Kailo. Chili cao. Chili cao.
Andrelo.
Kai, firmizar, que sai.
Anglaudel te jugó.
Firmizar, porque canto. No, cherro, que calmundarela me.
Diles, eso no son está viendo para acá.
Kai.
Ande el camión, no conchadica de camión. Ellos segundo, de izquierda para acá, de cables.
Kai, cherro, chili cao en la del.
El concho costelo, concho chisitilo.
Kai, forklift o camión.
Eso te muere muy. Castelo pegachari, palalo, que te quedó con la. Palalo, diles que a casa de un brindis. Viene un show, o sea, picucharico y se dalo.
Chili cao en la del.
Vaya, me dígale completico.
Kai.
Ande el camión, no conchadica de camión. Ellos segundo, de izquierda para acá, de cables.
Kai, cherro, chili cao en la del.
El concho costelo, concho chisitilo.
Kai,
Eso te muere muy.
forklift o camión.
Eso te muere muy. Castelo pegachari, palalo, que te quedó con la. Palalo, diles que a casa de un brindis. Viene un show, o sea, picucharico y se dalo.
Chili cao en la del.
Vaya, me dígale completico.
Kai.
Costelo, de que acá, dile que acá callale, ahí yo muy pelón, sí, pelón, varón, pelón. Hinchar los creadores dijeron de Concha, Claudia, que chupa abajo. Catelo pegachari, palalo, catacodocola. Palalo, dile que a casa de Lombrini. Viene un show, o sea, pecucharico y te dalo. Vaya, me dígale completico. Dígale.
¿Forklift o camión?
Yo tomo muy. Catelo pegachari, palalo, catacodocola. Palalo, dile que a casa de Lombrini. Viene un show, o sea, pecucharico y te dalo. Vaya, me dígale completico. Dígale. Catelo de que acá, dile que acá, callale, a yo muy pelón, sí, pelón, varón, pelón. Hinchalo usted a dos, dijeron de. Vamos a Claudio, que chupa abajo. Uy. Catelo pegachari, palalo, catacodocola. Palalo, dile que a casa de Lombrini. Viene un show, o sea, pecucharico y te dalo. Vaya, me dígale completico. Dígale.
Yeah. I mean, that's the video that's out there. It does depict something in the forklift. As he stated, the description matches what he stated in the 911 call.
Would you say that was in the forklift or in front of it? Because I was really struggling there. At first, I thought it was inside too, and then I thought maybe it's standing in front of it, and it's really fuzzy, right? Like it's kind of cloaking itself. Is that? I noticed that everything around it was in focus except for the entity itself, right?
Yes.
Which is weird. Now we have heard there's possibilities they could be cloaking. I mean, it was really hard to see, Rob. I mean, I'm not discounting that something wasn't there. Let me tell you, if this ever were to happen to me, I would have rushed that thing like in 2 seconds. I am so over the grainy videos, Rob. I'm sorry, I'm ranting now. I would have rushed that thing. I don't care if I was gone forever. You could keep my phone and do whatever and sell it on eBay after you download the video. Now, I don't care. I would have rushed that thing.
If you remember, the young man stated when he gave the description that they saw what they thought was potentially a craft or something, but he stated that that part of the yard was blurry. Do you remember him saying that?
Yeah, he did, and the whole thing was blurry. I mean, so was this the area that they were opening the gate to? Help me out. Was this the area that they had the Google Earth view of, that big parking area where there were a lot of trucks?
When I looked on the map area, and it did look like it would have been, if you're facing their house, the left side of the house where they took the police through. That
goes into that big area.
Yeah, because if you look in the overhead shot, the forklift is on the left side of the yard. So that view of them looking at the forklift, they would have had to have been coming through the side gate on the left.
Okay. Now, and so that's all part of that same area.
With that being said, here's the thing. If you're going to hoax something, and you're going to go ahead and make a 911 call, I don't think that you make up that they're in the forklift. There's so many. The yard is huge. You could have said it ran over behind somewhere else. It could. It was.
Yeah, they had a
But
lot of stuff in there.
for the fact that they said specifically that it was in the forklift, and if you look in the picture, I didn't catch this at first, but the second ET supposedly is there on the right. And if he stated they were 9 to 10 feet tall, the one on the right would appear that it's standing outside of the. So to me, it looks like the one on the left is inside of it, for however you call inside. But then the one on the right appears to be like standing maybe next to it.
Or yeah, I kind of
Outside of it,
thought
though?
both were outside after I thought about that. And those are big forklifts. Those are tall ones. Those aren't your standard type. Those are tall. And I'm thinking maybe they were both standing.
Now look at the one on the right.
Mhm.
So the shoulder, it looks like the shoulder is you can see light shining on the shoulder, right?
Yes.
Is what it looks like. So with that being said,
He's outside.
is this potentially the ET craft? You know what I mean? I don't know. Is this the ET standing next to the forklift? This is the video that was put out there.
It's hard
And
to tell,
if you
Rob.
look in the video that they showed in the news report, the clip that they show, it actually shows that the ET, that this is the same video, because the one that's on the inside, you could actually see it. So, yeah.
I'm laughing at Magneticus's comment about all that power equipment and no guns.
Yeah.
I would have just, but I'm hindsight's 2020. Who knows? Maybe
Yeah, no, they did.
Screaming like a girl.
In the
I have
video,
no
they all,
idea,
and that's
but
the
I
other
would
part of
definitely
it.
have gone in there because
In
this
the-
is too ridiculous. And they were able to stand there too, because initially they were scared. Right, the first video we saw is they got a glimpse and they turned and ran. But then this video, they hung out because I guess they had built up their confidence enough, thought maybe if the thing didn't notice them, they could film it. I could see doing that, right? You're going to kind of try to be quiet and make sure it doesn't see you, but you can see it and do your best to film it. But yeah, it was weird. Nothing went into focus. It was very fuzzy and cloaked. Is that part
and
of the
they
phenomenon?
went out there with three big guns, okay? So I don't see them arming themselves in that fashion.
They did have guns.
They all did. They all did. So if
all right,
in the video you can see they all have them. The guy has one in his hand, the other guy has one on his hip, and so you'd have to wonder why they would go out armed like that if they didn't see anything. So it just you have to put the pieces to the puzzle, right? Because I don't think that there's anything out there besides just people out there that are skeptics that have potentially just tried to say, okay, well, the light in the sky was a meteor, so therefore this was not a crashed ET craft. That circle was in the gravel a year before on Google
that
Earth,
was not. That was also debunked, and that doesn't change the story. Meteor and the circle are both debunked. I don't have a problem with that. It doesn't change the story. I have to say though that the guy Doug that News Nation interviewed, the YouTuber, I hadn't heard of him before. He lends some credibility to this. I think he lends quite a bit. I got the sense that he went in there seriously investigating it, and he doesn't seem like he's biased one way or the other. He seemed to come away convinced that these people weren't lying. So I'm feeling similarly. It's just, once again, we get so close and we just can't get that smoking gun video. I mean, this is too fuzzy, man.
Here's what someone brought to my attention. And hey, what's up? Derek Galloway stepped in the building. So this is what someone said. What if ET crafts are blurry? What if ETs are blurry? Therefore, even if you had one standing in front of you and you took a 5 foot away picture, who's to say that picture comes out crystal clear?
Right. Maybe what they saw in person was clear, but then what's recorded by a camera is not, which I could certainly get it, right? If it's an electronic thing, who knows what sort of tricks they can play as far as cloaking capabilities. Who knows?
And I think the other part of that is the description. Big glowing eyes, Have you ever even really heard a description like that from past sightings? Not really.
Varginha, the Brazil
Varginha, and that's
Virginia
what
case.
came to mind for me.
Yeah,
And if
that's
you
the
look
only
at
one that had glowing eyes.
if you look at that ET in the image, it kind of
looks like
resembles that a little bit. Yeah, just the silhouette of it. So
it's not
like
a
I said,
typical gray. It's like a much darker with glowing eyes and much bigger. It's different.
We'll keep this story just open, and we'll just see if any other good points come out about this. But
maybe you need to take a road trip, man. You're not too far from Vegas.
And I will be down there soon, and I might do that. But the thing is, a lot of people have stopped by there, so I don't want to be that guy to show up over there. The YouTuber who got the jump on it early. I might actually reach out to him and then see what information he has, because on the side he's actually a private investigator anyways. So there's a lot more that he's actually uncovered from this. So maybe we can get his word on it. But moving on to the next one here, so we'll parking lot that, and we'll be back on that another time. But we have Avi Loeb finding evidence. So Galileo project goes to the seas. They board the ship. They drop the magnetic sled into the bottom of the ocean, and they find what he calls a needle in a haystack. Let's go ahead and take a look at that story, and then we'll go ahead and comment on that in a moment here.
Now, to discuss this, welcome, Dr. Loeb.
Thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure. Well, it's a very challenging task. We followed on data about a meteor that landed about 50 miles away from the coast of Papua New Guinea in 2014. And when analyzing it, it became clear that it came from outside the solar system. It was moving too fast to be bound to the sun, and it had material strength that was tougher than iron. And so that raised the possibility that it may be artificial in origin, technological, a spacecraft, just like New Horizons that we sent out that will go to interstellar space, and imagine it colliding with an exoplanet like the Earth and appearing as a meteor. To find this out, it's not just a hypothetical question. We can actually go to the Pacific Ocean and search for it. And that's what we did. And it's a very challenging task because we're looking for fragments that were left behind from the fireball, the explosion of this meteor, and they can be a fraction of a millimeter in size, roughly the size of the head of a pin. And just imagine they're sitting on the ocean floor at a depth of about a mile, and we are trying to find them. And for that, we are using a sled with magnets on it, and we are assuming that these small droplets that melted off the surface of the object when it entered the atmosphere and burned up, those droplets would be attracted to the magnet. And so we were sort of moving the sled back and forth across a region of about 10 miles. And amazingly enough, we found the needle in the ocean. Well, so first about the interstellar origin, that became clear from the high speed of the meteor. And we discovered it based on government data. And then the U.S. Space Command issued a letter to NASA where it confirmed that the 99.999% that indeed this object was moving too fast to be bound to the sun, that it came from outside the solar system. And moreover, they released data about the fireball that allowed us to infer that it's tougher than all the space rocks that were identified by NASA over the past decade, 272 of them. So it was made of very unusual material. And that led me to initiate this expedition. And we have an exceptional team of researchers and support staff that allowed us to build this machinery that we are using to find those fragments that were left behind. And now we can actually look at the materials that we recovered. And amazingly enough, we found basically what is called the spherules. These are particles that are spherical, perfect spheres made of metal. And we can put them into what is called an X-ray fluorescence analyzer that allows us to infer the composition. And the composition appears to be different than commercial metals that we use here on Earth, anything that humans produce. But it's also different from asteroids, from rocks that previously were analyzed. And that makes, first of all, it implies that perhaps indeed it originated from a completely different environment. And moreover, perhaps it was manufactured in an artificial way, technologically. And, that would be the first time that an interstellar object was analyzed by humans. We can hold it in our hand, the materials. We retrieve them from the ocean. And the ocean is a perfect museum to collect those things because they do not get covered. If it fell in the Sahara Desert, for example, it would have been covered by dust over the past decade. We wouldn't find it. And so we're lucky on many fronts, also in terms of those small particles. It took us a while to find them because they were embedded in volcanic ash that basically covers the entire surface of the ocean floor. And so we had to, go with tweezers and isolate them, but after looking at them through microscopes. And, as of now, we have 11 of them. They are quite remarkable. You can see images of them that I put on my blog on medium.com. So if you just search for Avi Loeb at medium.com. In fact, I just a half an hour ago, I showed images of the last 2 that we discovered. But before that, there were 9 others. And they are quite remarkable. I mean, they're tiny, the size of the head of a pin. And these are the type of droplets you get from heating of any meteor that enters the atmosphere. But in this case, the meteor is very special, both in composition and in speed. It actually moved outside the solar system faster than 95% of all the stars near the sun. And that raises the possibility that it had some artificial propulsion. Why would it move so fast, even relative to stars near the sun? And why would it be made of materials that are far tougher than iron? And so now we have the materials. And I plan to bring them back to the Harvard College Observatory, where we have access to exceptional instruments. We can't have them here on the boat. But once we analyze them there, we can quite conclusively figure out, first, that this object was interstellar, because we might find isotopes that you don't see in solar system objects. But moreover, we might figure out that it's actually technological in origin. Once again, because it's made of some alloy that does not appear in nature.
Do you think it's possible that there is alien life in the oceans, possibly traveling through larger bodies of water?
No, the way I interpret this is you can think of Voyager, New Horizons, Pioneer that we launched into space. These will go into the interstellar space and, in 1 billion years, be functional anymore. So they will collide with a planet like the Earth and just burn up in the atmosphere, and perhaps the core of those spacecraft will end up at the ocean floor. And so, in fact, we might be searching for whatever is left behind. And in my last class at Harvard, I asked the students, if we find a gadget, should we press a button? Would you press a button? And half of the class said, no way. I'm worried about the consequences. Half of the class said, I'm actually quite curious to figure out what will happen. Maybe it's GPT 100. And I am very reserved. I will not, you shouldn't worry, because I first will bring it to a laboratory. What you see here is what is called the winch, which is basically a cable that is connected to the sled. The sled is basically, here we have a second copy of the sled. It has an array of magnets on both sides that collect magnetic particles that are magnetized. And they basically attach to it. And as this sled is dragged on the ocean floor, roughly a mile deep, so it's very deep and dark there. And we have also video cameras that take a picture of where we are going on the ocean floor and bring it back to deck. So basically, you can see the winch cable going into the ocean. It's right now it's dark, it's nighttime, and the sled is now a mile down from where the ship is. And just think about it, we're going about 10 miles on each line that we are surveying, and roughly a mile deep, and we're finding these tiny spheroids that are attached to the magnets that end up in our laboratory, and we will analyze them.
And just while you're going over to those images, you're saying that because the metal is the spheres that you've recovered are alloys, they're combinations of metals that we haven't, that are not naturally occurring. That is what the real kind of red flag is here, that they were made and not just, random particles that are crashing into Earth. This is evidence of extraterrestrial life.
Right. Yeah, it's the composition, but we know that it's interstellar. Also, here is another image that is quite beautiful.
Can you tilt your camera down a little bit?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah, so Matteo, I know over previous shows you've been a big critic and you've been someone who's been waiting for Avi Loeb to come with some receipts. Okay, so he has receipts now. What do you think about this?
You could have got these receipts at Walmart, buddy. Look, I don't want to seem like I'm being a skeptic all the time when it comes to this. There's science here, and I'm not going to claim I'm a material scientist. I'm not, but I know enough about materials because I've dealt with it through the course of my career for various gadgets that I've been involved in the manufacture of. Iron, magnesium, and I was just reading the article that you had sent me earlier, Rob, which was or actually I found an article that was discussed the composition and the findings of the spheres. They have iron, magnesium, and titanium. Now, those obviously are all elements that exist, and maybe that's a strange combination of elements that we wouldn't do on Earth typically, but it doesn't necessarily mean it might not happen. And oh, by the way, this is a volcanic region. Hello, there's volcanic ash on the floor, the sea floor. All kinds of things come out of volcanoes, people, please. It's like it's like a steel mill, right? Everything's melted and getting combined together. All the trash that ends up on the floor of the ocean could end up getting melted down in one of these volcanoes or affected by one of these volcanoes that are on the seafloor and get spread out. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's what happened, but for him to find something to this that's necessarily tied to the asteroid that hit, 8 years ago? Oh, no.
Right.
9 years ago.
A while ago.
It's kind of a stretch. This is my feeling, and I apologize once again for sounding skeptical. It's kind of a stretch, and he's here. But here's the good thing, and I'm going to reserve judgment because he's doing what he needs to do. Take the stuff to the lab now and do the isotopic analysis.
Right.
If there are isotopes in the magnesium and the titanium and the iron that don't exist on Earth, case closed, it's extraterrestrial. It came from a meteor, and I'm good with that. And then we're good. But if it's not anything that's isotopically abnormal for planet Earth, come on, you can't say with all the trash that's on the seafloor and all the metal that goes everywhere. I was just watching some video earlier about how plastics, microplastics, are in everything we consume and eat and drink now. It's ridiculous. You can't say that. The same is true for metal trash. And anyhow, so that's my take on it.
Yeah, and that's a fair take. And that's why I couldn't wait to hear you say it, because I know you've been asking Avi Loeb, where's the receipts? Where's the data?
Yeah, he has been planning this trip for well over a year. We knew about it, and some of the fun numbers. I looked up some numbers. We'll share, since I'm kind of a little bit of a science geek here. The asteroid from 2014 was called CNEOS 2014-0108. It came in at a speed that was on the order of 60 kilometers per second. You know what that is in miles per hour? 134,000. Mind you, if you were to take a rocket or a projectile and shoot it off of the Earth, it would escape the Earth's gravity if you were doing 11 kilometers per second, which is about 25,000 miles an hour. You would escape the sun's gravity from Earth if you're doing 42 kilometers per second, which is a little under 100,000 miles an hour. This thing was doing 135,000 miles an hour. So they knew that this thing came from outer space, was blasting its way through the solar system, and ran into Earth, right? And it would have kept, if it had missed the Earth, it would have just gone out the other side and kept going and never would have stopped. In other words, the sun's gravity would have never captured it. That's why this was known to be extra solar, right? It was outside of our solar system. So I always thought those numbers were interesting because they're just phenomenal speeds, right? It's just can't even imagine how fast.
Yeah. Now here's what I'll say. So that you gave that view. Let me go ahead and give this view. So,
give me your view. I want to hear.
So here's what I think. Here's okay. So here's what I heard. I heard him say that they found these materials and that they're interesting, but he's unsure, and we have to wait until we get them back to land, back to the lab to actually see what they are. So I don't think that he really has doubled down on the fact that these are extraterrestrial. Now, to the second point, to the point of the asteroid tracking down material from that particular asteroid. Now, yeah, that I could see that as a long shot with as vast as the ocean is, being able to pinpoint where that and just being lucky enough to have recovered material from that. But as we've talked about and we've observed with many other sightings, the one that comes to mind is the one, I believe, up in Puget Sound, where the craft gave off some molten material that ended up falling onto the fisherman and I believe killed his dog.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would be more into believing or feeling that maybe this is material that's expelled from UFOs, period. And so this could be just material. I would imagine if the ocean is host to UFOs and has been for millions of years, that you would be likely to find some sort of material everywhere. Across the ocean.
That's
based on
point.
The amount of time that has passed. And that might be what we have here, not necessarily from the particular meteorite, but maybe something that was left off or expelled by something at some point in our past. What do you think about that?
I think it could be just about anywhere. I mean, he picked this spot because he wanted to go after this particular item, but yeah, I mean, anything that impacts the Earth it breaks apart in the sky. I mean, any of the green meteor that we saw in Vegas, that landed somewhere. That's going to leave, right? Or maybe there's fragments that ended up in the ocean there, or that wasn't.
And the Puget Sound sighting, we're under the belief or understanding that trying to understand what it was that it might have been doing by expelling that material would have been like old used spent fuel, essentially, or something along those lines. So maybe it's something that these things do at some point during their operation. They expel this material and it's the waste that's expelled, and it ends up, if they're in the ocean or even over the ocean, that it ends up falling into the ocean. Ocean is 70% of the surface of Earth, and these things are in our sky, and if they do expel material like that, chances are it's going to fall into the ocean. So
yeah, you can hide a lot in the bottom of the ocean, man.
That would be a plausible thing there. But the big thing, like I stated, that I took away was that he found something strange, maybe interesting, But since they don't have the lab there on the ship, that they're going to take it back to the lab and then determine what it is. But I will say that I liked the fact of how transparent he was with his data, which is one thing that he promised to do. So he did promise to let us know what he found when he found it. He stated that this stuff is posted at medium.com under Avi Loeb. So I guess you guys can all go there and check out the actual images of what he found. But I like the transparency, and I'm hoping that it sets an example for other ventures that are out there trying to do the same thing. You know what I mean?
Great stuff. Awesome stuff.
So next, we got out of the Avi Loeb stuff, and I had a story that kind of flew over the radar. I don't know if I saw too many people talk about this, but it was the UFO F-16 dogfight, apparently, that happened over Michigan. Somebody reported this. So what I will do is go ahead and read this story.
This was news to me, totally.
Yeah, this happened apparently about a week or so ago. So this is an article written by James Lydell. And let me go ahead and jump into that here. So 2 F-16 jet fighters were supposedly no match for a UFO, with witnesses in Michigan claiming the metallic disc whizzed past them with ease and even did a victory lap. So, a UFO outmaneuvered an F-16 fighter jet in a dogfight with ease and did a victory lap to celebrate, witnesses claimed. Military veteran Christopher Bilbrey, his unnamed wife, and 2 co-workers made the sighting at Bad Axe, Michigan on the 3rd of June, the National UFO Reporting Center reported. The group were in a Myers grocery store parking lot, parking lot, at 10 a.m. when they claimed to hear the ear-shattering sound of 2 fighter jets as they chased a metallic disc. The group were in a Myers grocery store parking lot at 10 a.m. when they claimed to hear the ear-shattering sound. Suddenly, an ear-shattering afterburner on 2, what I think were F-16 or F-22s, were flying together while dogfighting, something I couldn't see at first. The jets were left in the UFO's dust as they entered a brutal dogfight. Christopher added, the UAP were extremely fast. It was capable of overtaking and outmaneuvering the fighter jets with extreme ease. It would overtake a jet, stop suddenly, and seem to turn towards the incoming jet, like spin in their direction without moving. Both of the jets proceeded to fire anti-missile flares as if they were under attack, while the metal disc continued to spin, the witness claimed. I did not see if the UAP had shot anything I could define as a weapon, the veteran added. 3 attempts to take down the UAP later, and the jets had given up. Both of the jets proceeded to fire anti-missile... Okay, no, same part. Okay, the crafty flying disc sat back in the sun before supposedly taking the victory lap and flying north towards Lake Huron. Christopher aimed to capture the phenomenon on his phone, but just his luck, the glare and the altitude of the planes made it difficult. On June 7th, just 4 days after the initial UFO sighting, Christopher said the F-16 returned to the exact same spot at the same time of the day, firing flares again. Huron County Sheriff Kelly Hansen said no other reports were made of the incident earlier this month. So, yeah, not a lot of
That's a tough
there.
one, man, because if you're in a grocery store and there are fighter jets making a racket outside, you're not going to be the only 2 or 3 people to know about this.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll say this article, because I've read a couple different articles about it. Apparently, in the original sighting, it said that the UAP or UFO positioned itself in the sun's glare in order to outmaneuver the jet, so that by positioning itself within the sun, that they were unable to keep an eye on it or keep a lock on it. So for what it's worth, that is one of the UFO stories that are floating around right now. And, we walk middle of the road here, and I feel that could be a grain of salt reporting. The part that kind of makes it Not really tangible for me is just the fact that they came back to the same spot 4 days later and dropped flares. I don't understand why they would do that, especially if there's wasn't anything present at the
No.
time.
Well, that
So,
could have been to decoy it, they're claiming, like a Phoenix Lights incident where after the event they dropped flares to throw everybody off and say, look, it was just
okay,
flares.
okay, okay,
That's what I
okay.
think their claim is. And
Oh,
but and that's fine. That's certainly plausible, but I'm a little surprised that this didn't get wider coverage because come on. Jets
well,
flying, with afterburners over a neighborhood with a supermarket. Come on,
to
I
be
mean,
fair though,
everybody should be there,
to
right?
be fair though, we just had David Grusch come out with the world's biggest story, and all the media outlets refused to pick it up.
Yeah.
So could be more of that the stigma going on right
Yes,
now.
and you reminded me of a point I wanted to make. Bravo to News Nation and The Hill over the past 2 to 3 weeks. I feel like those kind of, offbeat news outlets have really done the whole UAP, UFO phenomenon a great service by providing the coverage that they have. So
Right, I
kudos to
agree.
them. And I hope they keep doing it. And
I
because
agree.
they are, other news outlets are like, geez, we may
And
be
and
missing the boat here.
and Ross Coulthard taking advantage of that situation, I want to applaud him for that because, as far as even with those news outlets picking it up,
Yes.
they with him working alongside of them, now they have a person, a credible reporter, journalistic integrity, who is able to really tackle the problem, the story with the backing of a network like that. So I think that was a good move by Ross, and I hope they continue to do business going forward. So we'll see what happens. But we have leading into our David Grusch story here. We had the Canada attending first of its kind UFO briefing at the Pentagon. So this is something that was reported earlier this month by Alexander Panetta. And let me go ahead and get into what that's talking about. So the Canadian government has confirmed its participation in a first of its kind international meeting on unidentified flying objects hosted by the United States military headquarters. The gathering at the Pentagon late last month comes amidst a burst of activity in Washington and eye-popping news related to so-called unidentified anomalous phenomena. It featured a U.S.-led briefing to visitors from nations of the Five Eyes Intelligence Sharing Alliance, which includes Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand. The Canadian Department of National Defense told CBC in an email that Canada attended the meeting, led by a Royal Canadian Air Force representative. The details of the meeting remain classified. DND said in the email it can be characterized as sharing of information on the subject of UAP, and no further details can be shared at this time. The meeting featured a presentation by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the veteran scientist in the U.S. National Defense Establishment who leads the All-Domain Anomaly Research or Resolution Office, or ARROW, a new entity created in 2022 to lead UAP-related activities for the U.S. military. Kirkpatrick publicly revealed the Five Eyes gathering last week while speaking at a public conference hosted by NASA. I have just held our first Five Eyes forum on this subject, Kirkpatrick said. He explained the goal of the meeting allies to coordinate more closely with friendly nations in pooling information on UAP sightings. The creation of his office is part of a surge in activity following a 2017 report in the New York Times on bizarre sightings kept secret by the U.S. military. In the wake of that report, Kirkpatrick's office was created, and the U.S. government now produces an annual report on UAP sightings and Congress for government whistleblowers to report sightings. Now, two of the journalists who wrote that Watershed 2017 report have taken one giant leap forward and reported extraordinary new allegations. This week, they described jaw-dropping new claims from a decorated former combat officer who served as the U.S. Department of Defense representative to a UAP task force from 2019 to 2021. David Grusch was quoted in their print report and in a later televised interview saying the United States has in its possession aircraft of non-human origin. And not just one aircraft, he says, but many. He says the discoveries are numerous, involving everything from wreckage up to intact vehicles. And he says these items have been collected for decades by the U.S. government, by allies, and by defense contractors. He says this information is being illegally withheld from members of Congress, and he's alerted them as well as the Inspector General from the American intelligence community. The non-human intelligence phenomenon is real. We are not alone. Retrievals of this kind are not limited to the United States. This is a global phenomenon, and yet a global solution continues to elude us, Gray says in the report. This, to be clear, is not the official United States government line. There is no credible evidence to date of extraterrestrial activity, non-earthly technology, or objects that defy the known laws of physics, Kirkpatrick said in a recent testimony before the United States Senate. Additionally, the latest annual UAP report did not cite any evidence of extraterrestrial technology. It said that of 366 recorded sightings, 163 wound up being balloons or balloon-like entities, 26 were categorized as unmanned aerial vehicles, and 6 were aerospace clutter. However, it said 171 sightings remained unexplained. The U.S. military disputes Grusch's suggestion that it holds evidence of alien craft. In an email to CBC News, Pentagon spokeswoman Susan Goh said, Arrow has not discovered any verifiable information to substantiate claims that any programs regarding the possession or reverse engineering of extraterrestrial materials have existed in the past or exist currently. She said Arrow is committing to following the data and its investigation wherever it leads. So, you know, how we feel about Susan Goh and how she's, you know, quick to come out and report on some things or give statements on some things, but not so quick to report in when it really seems to matter in other situations. What did you think about that article there, and what are your feelings?
I find it interesting because, let me ask you this. When did that article, it sounds like that article came out just
first week of June.
After the reveal of the David Grusch reveal. Okay. In a week after David Grusch, remember Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp on their Weaponized podcast unveiled that letter from one of the members of Parliament in Canada. Larry McGuire was his name. And that letter was from him addressed to the defense minister of Canada.
Yes.
And it was basically saying the same thing that this article cites, but his point of his letter was, hey, he did talk about the Five Eyes too, which is also interesting. And he talked about that other acronym that I don't know what it's, AGRIS or something. It stood for Australia, US, and UK, kind of a separate sub-consortium within the Five Eyes that our guests are. Larry McGuire's concern was there's going to be a reveal coming here, and Canada is going to be late to the party. And in order for them to be able to save face with their populace, they need to get caught up quick.
Right.
That was his concern. But I find it interesting that this article and the letter from Larry McGuire were at the same time, because they lend credibility to each other. Clearly, right. Canada is involved in a serious way. And once again, why would governments be taking time to do this unless there wasn't a there, as the saying goes?
Yeah, and I believe that report you're referring to also led to the understanding that they may have been involved in this, or at least aware of crash retrievals happening back as far as like 1950, I want to say. So
yes,
that they've actually been in this. And it's good to kind of get them to, I mean, they border us, so to get them to kind of corroborate some of the stuff that we know that they are aware of. They have to be, as their own nation, so close to us. They have to be aware of some of the things that we've been doing as a nation. So it's definitely good that they came out with that information.
They just came out with it, but come on, they've been recovering crashed material. We've been recovering crashed material. It's just that now the talk is coming out, and to have them say they've been doing it all the way back to the 1950s, I'm sure that doesn't come as a surprise to you.
And an example, a great example of that is how they partnered on the Chinese balloon situation that happened up there along the border.
Good point. Yep.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, we do have our meat and potatoes. We're going to go ahead and get into, which is the David Grusch. So the whistle's been blown. So what now? So we had at least the last 2 weeks of reporting on this, reporting on that. David Grusch, and so the main story comes out, the bombshell. Everyone's in awe at what they just heard. Then for the next few days, we were just deciphering the information and letting it absorb. Then a few days after that, for about a week straight, we had skeptics come out and try to poke holes in the whole David Grusch story. So, and it's proven that they haven't been able to do much damage to his credibility, as it was stated from the beginning that he was highly credible, and this has been mentioned by a lot of people who know him very well. So, what did you? And we haven't talked since this whole thing started. So,
we have not.
How do you feel about how this came out and kind of where it's gone up to this point?
There's a lot to unpack here, buddy, and I've kind of gone and I've been following where all of the information has been leading as well, all of the follow-up. I mean, we had the initial release. We've had, as you want to talk about the behavioral panel analysis of what Grusch did. We've had reaction from Congress, right? And what they think needs to get done now. And there's now a new Senate Intelligence Authorization Act draft for 2024 that may have information that has content that may have stemmed from David Grusch. So in a matter of like the 2 weeks that follow this, 3 weeks now, all kinds of things have happened as a result. And we all know what's happened. Here's my summary in one line. No one at the Pentagon has come out and discredited this guy directly.
Right.
Susan Go came out and said what you read earlier in that Canada article, that Arrow has no evidence. That's Arrow. And we already know Arrow isn't charged with finding out anything to do with the NHI aspect of UAP. We know that now, and we all need to get our head out of that, because Arrow's never going to deliver anything meaningful to us as far as what we're all interested in. Case closed. But if the Pentagon really wanted to crush this, I would have thought they would have done it by now, and they haven't. And to me, that speaks volumes. That tells me that all of the credibility that David Grusch was lent by all of those people who supposedly backed him up after he went to the through the DOPSA review, after he went to the Inspector General. This was where the whole line of his case being, what were the words, credible and of concern, I think were the words, or that's paraphrasing it, but the Inspector General felt that his case was highly credible and of urgent concern or something like that. That's still all in play, and the Pentagon hasn't come out and squashed it. There's a there here, to use some real vaguer terms again, and I like those. And there's more to it. And anyhow, I have other comments as well, but I'll shut up and let you talk, because
I feel that there definitely is a there with this case. Like he stated, it hasn't been able to be debunked, and if we want to compare it to Lou Elizondo, the way that they attacked him and tried to tear him down for being pretty much a messenger, They have not been able to do anything remotely close to this with David Grusch.
Right. We need to point out, though, and everybody knows this, David Grusch could not present any of the hard evidence. And we all know
Right.
that. This is why, and it's primarily because it's all classified. And we may or may not ever be able to hear it. So that's important. But claims without where the evidence was given to Congress and given to some of these, secure committees, I think did happen, because if that did not happen, the Pentagon could have, urinated all over that, and they didn't. And
so that kind of leads us into the whole thing, because the first question would be, where's the proof that David Grusch is lying? So
yes.
we just talked about numerous angles that they tried to come at him with, which was, he didn't see the craft, so maybe he's just saying what he thinks he knows or he thinks he understands. Maybe he doesn't realize that he's lying and that he's being lied to. Another thing was they've gone as far as some of these skeptics, and you gotta give them something for at least trying, right? But they went ahead and tried to pull the behavior panels show that they had done on the body language of David Grusch, and they were just making far out claims. We know it's a pseudoscience at best, and they were being so matter of fact as their analysis of David Grusch is not telling the truth. All of them had the view that he was not telling the truth and he was saying things that he really didn't mean. And I really just wanted to point out that a few months prior, they actually got this other case completely wrong. They got it completely wrong. So
the same panel,
but it gives me hope that that's what skeptics are reaching for. That means they don't have anything else to reach for to discredit this guy.
They're going
as far
right.
as talking, focusing on the behavior panel that word doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. So it was actually fun for me to watch them go through that and kind of grovel. And in the same way with Mick West, got on live with Ross Coulthard, did a little panel situation on News Nation.
Yes,
and pretty much got his hat handed to him.
Oh, he did.
Right there live on TV. So it's a great time, though, because if you could beat the skeptics down with these BS observations that they have, then they're left with nothing. And then they have to, what happens when you don't have anything else to pull from?
Totally agree. And I want to make one other comment, because I have been looking and listening, and I want to commend Leslie Kean in all of this. And here's why. And she had a very important thing to say that I think matters here significantly. And it pertains to, I'm going to preface it, it pertains to the disinformation conspiracy, I'm going to call it. Either Grusch is being told the truth by all of these people. There's no doubt David Grusch has conveyed what he has heard, and he's being truthful about that. I don't think anyone's going to argue there. People who are in the know have told him something. Now, were those people in the know telling him the truth, or were they purposely feeding him lies so that he would go public with it as part of a grand disinformation conspiracy, right? La PSYOP, right? What Lou Elizondo did for a living, right? Where he purposely would feed disinformation. Hold on to that thought, because this is where Leslie Kean comes in. Leslie Kean she's not like the most popular ufologist in the world. I've been watching her since 2020 when she started, and she was always very much behind the scenes. But this woman, she has credibility and she has contacts. And you ever watch her get interviewed, she is so reluctant to give her feeling on anything.
Right.
She will not do it. And it's very hard for her. People keep asking, and I'm like, stop asking her that because she can't answer it. She doesn't want to answer it.
Right.
And she's very respectful. But that speaks volumes because she would have never in 1,000 years published this article with Ralph Blumenthal and the debrief or wherever else they were trying to get it into first, the Washington Post and what have you. No one would print it until that's why they ended up at the debrief. She would not have done this unless she felt this was real, and she had vetted this guy, and she has not only spoken to his sources but her own sources whom she knows. And here's the point that she made that I thought was magnificent. She said, how could and why would all of these inside people who don't know each other all conspire to tell David separately a bunch of lies?
Right.
That, if you sit back and you think about that, she is 1,000% right. It's not like these people, it's not the same person, it's not the same group. These people, a lot of them don't know each other, but they know David Grusch was the common thread between all of them because he was on the UAP task force. He was charged with investigating this. And then people who knew there was wrongdoing going on, right, illegal spending, went to him to tell him. They don't know. So that right there says, what he was told was not disinformation, right? So if what he said is real and it wasn't disinformation, what is that? What's the conclusion?
And you bring up a good point.
True.
You bring up a good point because it was something that I was saying to skeptics in the first week of them trying to pick apart David's story. So the whole, well, why doesn't he have proof? Well, he just heard secondhand. Well, his position in the UAP task force was being a person that would take in information from others who wanted to give the information. So for one, so that was just his job, was to receive the information. And then for two, he did state that he had saw things, so he may have been shown, and we don't know exactly what
documents, pictures,
documents, and possibly pictures,
possibly photos. There's some debate
which
about
he hasn't
that.
elaborated on, but he did insinuate that he had been shown things. So it's not just all word of mouth as far as that goes. And then the whole they want to hang the hat on the whole DOPSA review, right? Saying that because they approved that, they say specifically that it's basically his truth, and we won't validate, or we can't validate if he's telling the truth or not. And so they want to hang their hat on that, saying that they would have never signed it off if he was releasing information that they considered to be classified or information they did not want out. But I have a different view of that, right? Because it could very well be that they don't think you're going to believe the information that he's presenting, so there's no need for them to try to block the information from coming out.
I super valid point, Rob, and I agree with you 100%. He definitely wasn't revealing anything classified. They cleared that up. And what he did have to say, since he had no proof, because all the proof is classified, he could say whatever he wanted, right? He could have said that there are purple people eaters living on the moon, and no one could argue with him because he has no proof for or against. Same is the case here, right? So that doesn't mean it's not true. So the skeptics can be skeptics, but we're all in the same boat together. But the key is here's one of those cases where you have to consider the source, right? And considering the source here is really big because it has to do with everything we're talking about here, right? Who he is, his record, his reputation, his veteran status, his decorated service, all of the people who backed him up, all of the people who know the people who backed him up, everybody else who's met him firsthand. The source here is not a liar. And yes, the proof is out there. We unfortunately can't see it. Congress is going to has seen it, and it's a question of what,
Yeah.
like you said, whistle blown. Now what? What's going to happen, and what are we going to be able to see?
But you make the other great point that even if he had the pictures in his pocket, he wouldn't be able to show you. So
No,
to
we
ask him for
can't.
that, or to even think that the people who actually have the pictures are going to show you, is something that just isn't going to happen. So if you're sitting waiting on that type of proof for someone who has the pictures to come out and show you the pictures, I would just say don't hold your breath on that, because that something like that is obviously going to be classified, and they're not going to declassify that unless we get someone that comes in office that's going to declassify everything. But don't just think that a whistleblower is going to put their freedom on the line to show you a picture. And if you wanted a picture truthfully, all you really would need to do is go outside, point up at the sky, and you're gonna catch something.
They're going to see something.
They're up there. The same things that the government has pictures of, that you're requesting pictures of, you can take pictures of yourself. We know Tom King does
Our
it.
friend of the show, Tom King, Tim Senor, they all do that.
A lot of people have done it. A lot of the pictures out there that you want to be so quick to debunk, you're going to find out in the end were actual pictures of craft, and you had them this whole time, guys. So that really bothers me when skeptics take that. But there was a one part of the, with the initial release of the information, he did say that they had crashed craft, and then also pilots of the craft that they had retrieved may have been alive or dead. But he also got into a part of the interview where Ross asked him if people had been killed behind this, and that's kind of where it all took a dark turn. Now, keep in mind, this guy is telling you the truth. So when you listen to what he's saying here, these are things that you should probably keep in the side of your mental database going forward as we try to figure out how to navigate through this thing here. So let's just see what Ross said about that.
You know, the thing, and I think the host of the News Nation special, the follow-up analysis show, made this point multiple times. I think the biggest thing for a lot of people is the ontological shock. The fact that Grusch really did, Dave Grusch has really made some quite extraordinary allegations. And the one that I was holding my breath, and I was listening to it on the IFB audio as it was going out. I couldn't see it, but I was listening to it. It's the moment when Dave is asked, have people been killed to protect this secret? And people wonder why there's a resistance to revealing the existence of the program when you have a former very senior intelligence official saying that his understanding, his strong suspicion is that there have been people who have been murdered to protect this secret. We're talking here about crimes, Bryce. And then when people ask me, what am I scared of? That's what I was scared of. I'm scared of the fact that there are grave crimes committed allegedly by people in the executive arm of government, and possibly also in a private aerospace contractor, to conceal this secret. What have they done?
What have they done?
Is it any surprise that they don't want to talk about it?
Not to me. It was interesting, though, when I did that first interview in the a couple hours before the special. That's the very first question the anchorwoman asked me, was about people getting killed.
If he is telling the truth, it means that this planet has been deceived for many, many decades. We've been lied to. There's been a cover-up. We've been told to ridicule something that was in fact very, very real. The human race has been the victim of the most extraordinary disinformation operation. And it's been an incredibly successful one. I mean, it's such a taboo subject that even now, as people are being told by a former very senior intelligence official that it's real, that there are NHI, non-human intelligence, that yes, we do have craft. That's the allegation. The very time that we're telling that, I think people are going to have trouble processing it. And I'm not surprised at all that people are still going to be skeptical. But that's the issue. The issue is we know for a fact that he has made these allegations under oath and that they have been verified as credible by the Inspector General. And we know for a fact that he's given evidence to them under oath to the various House committees. And so on that basis alone, it's incumbent on the American people now to start rattling the cage and asking their government, what are you hiding? And why are you hiding it?
Great point there. Great in revelation, actually huge revelation that people are being killed, not just by contact with ET directly, but also potentially by those in power who don't want the secret to come out. And it's gonna tie into what we're gonna talk about in a moment, because that the notion that you have people in the government there that potentially are really silencing people, leads to some of the things and threats that have gone David Grusch's way. What do you think about what he just said right there?
Oh boy. 2 words. James Forrestal. Little UFO history here. A general statement first. What David Grusch has been stating are all of the things that you and I and everyone else has been suspecting has been going on for this entire time, right? In terms of crash retrievals, hiding the program, secrecy, silencing people in whatever ways possible, disinformation programs. It's all like he's basically saying what we've all thought was going on. And it goes back the whole UFO history. James Forrestal was the Secretary of Defense, and his death was very questionable. This was the guy who supposedly went crazy. They had him in a hospital room, and he threw himself out the window and committed suicide. And there's controversy to this day that he was thrown out the window. He didn't jump out the window because he was part of the original MJ-12 group, so he knew. And in fact, he probably was one of the people who wanted to go public. And like Kennedy, right? We've even heard about JFK's death may have been related to the fact that he wanted to expose what was going on. So what Grusch is saying here, I don't find shocking at all. This has been what's been claimed to have been going on for decades. And I don't think it should come as a shock to anybody.
And you have to
that's my
feeling
feeling.
about that. You have to think about that, though.
Yes.
This is, in this society that we live in, right? And we have the best country in the world. We're the most free.
Yeah. There's that dark side.
Right.
Yeah.
There's that dark side, right? And we see a lot of these dictators that do this type of thing in the open without caring what people think about that. But it's also showing that these things are even happening within our own government, and they are willing to do the extreme to make sure that you don't tell. So if you know that to be true, then you have to imagine what David Grusch could be going through right now as we speak in this very moment, what type of threats and things are going his way. Now, Ross also in this Need to Know kind of went a little deeper and started talking about the threats that David Grusch has been receiving. And I think you'll be kind of shocked where those threats have been coming from, actually. So let's go ahead, take a look at that real quick. Here we go.
Is Dave Grusch safe? Do you think he's safe?
I think he is now. I think he's a lot safer now that he's taken a public position. There are things that have happened to Dave that aren't very nice. His home's been broken into, and he's been targeted with surveillance, and I think he's been harassed. And I've got a pretty good idea who the people are that have been doing the harassing. It's quite extraordinary. It's probably not a government agency. It's probably a private contractor. More on that later.
Wow. So, all right. Well, okay. I was just going to say, are you going to be looking into that? I guess the answer is yes. Here's another, are you going to be looking into it question. You raised in that special that the Vatican has known about this for a while. What should happen about that? Should the Vatican, how do you get the Vatican legitimately on the record about what they know about the UFO situation?
Well, one of the things that I think is the red flag with the Vatican is that a few years ago, the Vatican astronomer made a very public statement that we are all God's children, whatever we are. If we're another species, we're still God's children. And that the Christian faith, they emphasized, is not incompatible with the belief in aliens. And I think the Vatican's been aware of this issue since at least the Second World War, when the Magenta craft was recovered. And I think that the Vatican apparently, my good friend Diana Walsh-Pasulka, the theologian professor, has apparently gone to the Vatican Library in the past. And she's told me that there are enormous archives in the Vatican still to be released where they've been studying the phenomena through millennia.
It is. Will there be interviews to follow with people who literally have first-person knowledge, the people who say, yes, I worked on this program, I touched that craft, I saw this body? Are we going to get that kind of thing coming anytime soon?
Yes.
Is there any information that it was implied that there might have been agreements between humans and the NHI? Is there any specific information on any agreements that may or may not have been made?
Not from Dave, but of course you and I can both speculate about the fact that there's long been in UFO mythology stories of a meeting at Holloman Air Force Base.
Right.
Depends what year, depending on what story you hear, but the best one I've heard is around about 1966. This wasn't one where a president was involved, but this involved military officials allegedly meeting non-human intelligences coming off a craft. I'm not in a position to be able to assert that I have sources that say to me that this is a true incident. But yeah, I was as amazed as everybody else when I heard Dave confirm the fact that he was talking about agreements with aliens. And more importantly, it's quite something to read it in the DOPSA file to actually see that the government, the Defense Office of Pre-Publication Security Review, actually authorized Mr. Grusch to talk about that. And just to make this point again, Bryce, I really want to drive this home. There are people in the defense and intelligence community who are good people. You know, not everybody in the defense and intelligence community are villains in this matter. There are really good people who've taken the position that there really is no good reason to keep this secret for another 80 years. And so that's why I think, in part, the DOPSA review happened. But they're not making it easy for us. They've obviously known that Dave was going to go public. I don't think they knew about my TV interview, but they certainly knew that Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal were working on a story. And I guess I was expecting more of a blowback. I was expecting a more definitive attack on Mr. Grusch, but there isn't one.
Well,
and I'm quite amazed, actually, that in the week since this story has been out, nobody has really laid a glove on his credibility. And in fact, there's been a conga line of friends of his who've come out in support of him on social media and in the Leslie Kean, Ralph Blumenthal article, testifying as to not only his credibility, but as to the truth of what he says. As Carl Nell, former Colonel Carl Nell, has testified, we are indeed not alone. It's quite extraordinary. And people keep on missing that. When Mick West talks about how, oh, there's no evidence, the simple fact is there is evidence. There are
evidence.
People on the record. We send people to jail on the basis of witness evidence. You know, hearsay evidence on occasion is admissible in a court of law. So the notion, oh, there's no evidence, bullshit. I'm calling it bullshit. And more importantly, the evidence is there before the various Senate and House committees and before the Inspector General. And if the Congress wants to do its job properly, it can start extracting that evidence in open public hearings, and the public can hear about it for the first time. I know a lot of what it is, not from Dave Grusch, but from other people. And boy, I really want the public to know, because there is no good reason. The public needs to know.
So, later in that interview, Bryce Zabel said that Ross should have a meme done of that. Oh, there's no evidence. So every time I hear anything from Mick West, that's what I'm gonna think.
That we should do Ross's voice. Yeah,
that was hilarious. So, but a
couple big things in there, man. There was two big things in there.
What'd you have?
Well, let's finish up the dark kind of topic of the fact that we may not live in a democratic republic, and it may be more of an autocracy like some of our adversaries. His mention of the third party, what I'll call the goon squad, how he said that the enforcement of the secrecy and the murders may have been third party, not government.
Right.
Sounds like some of my old relatives from the old country, but
yeah.
It would not shock me one bit that this is true, and the fact that this is going on, to your point earlier, is highly disturbing. And what does this really say? But that aside, here's the thought that occurred to me. That is why this has been a secret for 80 years.
Yeah.
People have literally been killed, and the threat of being killed was a lot realer, a lot more real than any of us ever thought. That's my takeaway from this. In other words, everybody says, oh, the government leaks this, leaks that. And back in 1947, everybody believed the government because it was post-World War II and everyone kept their mouth shut. No. There were real threats of killing, and the killings happened, and people were scared, and still are to this day. And that's why no one is opening their mouth, because there's a huge consequence, and it's called death. And I honestly think that's how this secret has been kept now. And this is going to be ugly if it comes out, because there are going to be a lot of people asking a lot of hard questions, and the government's not going to want to answer it.
Now, whose case was that, where they told the wife that traveled between Las Vegas and L.A. that there's a lot of desert?
Yeah, this was the woman who wasn't that the woman who was the nurse who had something to do with the Roswell autopsy?
Yes, I believe so. Yes,
it was her, and she had said something about that was the threat, and then she disappeared. Because the doctor, the coroner who knew her, never found her again after he had that lunch. He had that luncheon with her at the military mess hall, or however that story goes.
Exactly. Yeah, and they shipped her off somewhere else. Supposedly.
And he never saw her again.
Yeah.
Guess what? They could have squashed her,
now,
and no one would ever know.
This was one of the points I'm trying to make about with the Las Vegas ET situation. Now, if this thing was real, if the thing really happened, then obviously government entities showed up for sure, or caught them at the store in one of the aisles and made some not so subtle threats, and then they went ahead and disappeared and no longer wanted to stay at the residence. So that was just kind of tight. And it all makes sense because, like you stated, back in the day before internet and any of that, you couldn't reach out to anyone if you were out on the road by yourself.
No.
There were no cell phones.
No,
and
you'd be gone.
Were traveling in the desert, there's no pay phones. So, so think about that, and think about if you received a threat and you didn't have the means of communication to let someone know that something had happened or something. So you would probably be scared enough to not say anything or do anything. Now, it may not work so good in today's day because you could just hit the live button and go live, or do something along those lines.
Harder to be hidden, totally correct.
I want to say one thing though, because what we just watched was from about a week ago. We need to know. Recently, Ross kind of added to that comment where he kind of mentions that the contractors themselves may actually have done some of these crash retrievals directly.
Today, he said that, yes.
Directly, and not have been retrieved by the government and handed over to contractors, but they have actually gone out and retrieved them themselves.
Yeah, now you're really in a bind, because now the government doesn't even know what the contractors may have in their possession. And they have no right to it.
And the biggest thing is that he fears that they may actually attempt to hide any evidence before Congress even gets a chance to go look for it, to go knock on the door. So, and that kind of leads us into our last piece here, which is like whistleblown, what now? And what, as we know, Congress has now, heard David Grusch's story and has kind of stepped up to say that they want to investigate this further and that his testimony is warranted and that he's a credible individual and they want to dig further into it. And even before Ross said this today, my fear had been, well, with this time passing, someone's going to want to hide this evidence and so that it's not there when they go knock on the door. So what happens? So they get a chance to hide this. Congress rallies the troops and they go knocking on the door of where the stuff is supposed to be held, and they get an empty warehouse. And then they come back and say, oh yeah, we went there, we didn't find anything. It wasn't what you thought. They didn't have any of this stuff. So that's the only thing that kind of scares me at this point, as far as trying to get, as far as them trying to get to the truth,
get the hard evidence,
figuring out what it is that we have, right? Because if they get a chance to do that, what do we have to stop that from happening? You know what I mean?
That's a
there
valid
should be
point.
a way that they could get an immediate search warrant and go there now. You know what I mean? That's the kind of action that we need to have right now.
You're answering a question I was going to pose to you already, and it has to do exactly with that. And you heard, and Bryce Sable posed the question to Ross, and it was perfect. Are there going to be people who were actually in the program, who did touch the material, who did see the bodies testifying? And the answer was yes. So let's assume that all of the backstory that supports David Grusch gets revealed in a closed Senate hearing, or a closed committee hearing, we'll call it. It could be Senate or House. Whoever has the clearances to hear it will get it. Where is it going to go from there? Like, let's say, to your point, the contractors may hide some of the evidence, but the government probably still has some, I would hope. There's probably something still buried in one of those halls or one of those hangars at Wright-Patterson that we've read about for decades. I hope so. So let's say or Area 51. Let's say there's something the government has that's still proof positive. And let's say they get the contractor people to come in and interview to back all up what Grusch said. So there's this critical mass. There's proof positive. There's the smoking gun buried in this top secret committee, the secure committee. Where do you think it can go from there? Obviously, even if Tim Burchett gets wind of this, he's not allowed, right? I don't think he has enough clearances to go into these meetings. I don't know his position. But he wouldn't. Let's say he did. Marco Rubio clearly does. Let's say he hears it. He can't tell us, right? What are your thoughts on that? Are we going to end up at some sort of weird dead end? And what kind of dead end is that? I mean, when the Congress has been clamoring for this, and let's say they do find out, but it's secure, or it's considered, government, it's top secret or something, and it's classified. Excuse me, that's the word I'm looking for. It's classified. What happens then? Do they all just shut up and go home and say, "Oh, yeah, we had the meeting. Can't talk about it"?
You're right on point there, Mateo, because I think what does happen is that they do get to an end of the road with this.
Yeah.
And like I stated with the, I talked about on the Disclosure 2.0 show, showed the picture that Dr. Stephen Greer had shown of the Lockheed underground facility. And so if these are the facilities where things are being held, you can bet they have a plan for if someone comes to the door where to stash the stuff at. So I think it'll be, I don't think that any of these contractors are going to get caught with anything in their possession. I just don't think that that's going to happen. Now,
but the employees who testify will, and they won't have, unless they run away with something, they won't have any proof
more
either.
Hearsay again.
Hearsay.
Or since you bring that angle, hopefully they take some photos and they have those in their possession. That would be the saving grace there, because the only other outcome that I see is that you have these Marco Rubios and these senators that have the clearance to access these programs. What's going to have to happen, if none of those other things work, they're going to have to, and I don't even like talking about politics here, but they're going to have to campaign for the presidency, and then the president can declassify everything. So you get Marco Rubio, we'll just say, he gets these behind closed doors meetings, and he's made fully aware to where he now understands and fully believes that these things are taking place and these things are happening. It's going to take a person like that with that knowledge to step into a position to where they have now the power to declassify everything. And I think
the president do that?
The president, from what I understand, the president can declassify pretty much whatever comes across their desk. That's from what I understand. You know, we have that whole former president in the news and declassified documents thing going on right now.
Oh,
and
yeah.
For what I've observed with that, is as long as the president was still president, they would be able to declassify.
But that stuff
SCI,
wasn't
secret
declassified.
Compartmentalized information, right? But as the president, you apparently have the authority to declassify that information, which was what Kennedy was going to be pushing for, which is why that happened.
I see. If imagine Biden doing Trump a favor and declassifying everything that he's accused of holding in order to get him off the hook. That's, in other words, that's feasible. Not to say it would happen, but it's feasible that the sitting president could declassify something.
Here's the difference. You have presidential candidates right now. We'll use, and I don't even like politics, but we'll just briefly use RFK Jr., right? So they asked him on one of these shows what he thought about the UFO topic and what he would do. And essentially, we know that a lot of candidates are going to want to use this topic as a tool to get into their office and then potentially not look any further into this. So instead of having someone who is harnessed this topic to get their vote, then you have someone that actually knows that this stuff is going on, has seen things as a senator, and then has now, run for presidency, got voted in. Now, it's not that they've been told they should look into this, but they already know from previous experience. They've seen these things, and they behind closed doors in these top secret meetings. They know that these things exist, and then they would have the authority at that point to just declassify everything. That's the only way the cards are going to fall, unless the Congress has some sort of plan to circumvent the ability for these contractors to just get rid of the evidence. You know what I mean? Because that, if they walk into a building, an empty warehouse, then that's game over for that story. What do you do?
Unless the person who testified that they talked about that was directly involved has a piece of evidence they kept. It's going to be, they're not going to be able to prosecute. You're right. They're not going to be able to prosecute or prove anything at the actual contractor, because the contractor is going to clean it up before anybody gets there. But I'm just saying, once the information is out and proof positive exists, but it's trapped in this secure committee, I hate to think that the person who knows has to run for president to get it out, because that's a tall order, Rob. That ain't going to happen. And right. I mean, that's unlikely to happen. Let me put it that way. So I'm wondering where do we go from there? I mean, that's what we can only hope for, is that all of that gets revealed. And I just don't know. All we'd want, it would take a congressperson to say, hey, without revealing the details, can we at least announce a confirmation? Not a disclosure, but a confirmation that we are being engaged by a non-human intelligence. That's what I guess it would take.
Well,
right?
and we're just talking about this because I'm under the belief, and we've always said on this show, period, that disclosure doesn't come from the government. And you see the reasons why these sort of roadblocks that
we're gonna run right into one real soon here.
This is the reason why it won't come from them, and why we have to try to bring it ourselves. And I'll keep pushing that. Obviously, we have to cover these things and we have to look at this angle. But at the end of the day, we already understand that unless someone who's touching the craft comes out with the information, skeptics won't be satisfied. No one is, and even some of the believers won't be satisfied. I've been sort of surprised at how some of the non-skeptics actually debunk a lot of this stuff or try to write a lot of this stuff off. So it still won't come until we sit down and put the information together. But like I stated, you have the kids in aerial school who saw something come out of a craft, saw a craft. You have the Travis Waltons and the Betty Barney Hills who had, and the Whitley Strieber's who had been had interactions with ETs directly. You have the Fravers in the military who encountered the Tic Tacs and the gimbals. So you have all these different sources of data. It goes on and on. And if we actually sat down, if you had all those things sitting in front of you on the table, you would have enough puzzle pieces to put the puzzle together. It'd be a full puzzle right in front of your face, and you would not.
We kind of have it now. We have that now, right?
We do.
We almost have it now. The only thing we don't have is the person who touched the crash retrieval, and a picture of it, and whatever else we would need.
And with that credit, I'll throw the Las Vegas ET in that bag too. We had a society where somebody saw something actually on the ground, walking around the yard. Okay, boom, we have that. Now
that's a close encounter of the third kind, right there, man.
Let's take that and put it with everything else that we have that we've gathered as just humanity and as individuals, and you'll see what we have. And we have proof. We have enough proof for the bulk of humanity to understand that things are in the sky, things are landing on the ground, things are going underwater, things are getting out of the craft, things are walking around. So with that being said, that pretty much is everything that you could ever want to know about what's going on, or as far as trying to understand what's going on. So with that being said, David Grusch, whistle blown. Hopefully Ross Coulthard says there is more to come on that. So we will be waiting to hear what comes out with that. But when we get into this, you already know what time it is. Actually, we don't have Once Upon a Time in Ufology this week, but we do have Science Fiction to Science Fact Movie Edition. And our movie is going to be for this week. Don't Look Up, right? Don't Look Up. Now, not an ET movie. However, the attitude of the citizens and the government is what you should be paying attention to in this movie. And actually, the reason why the movie was really even made was to parody the reality of the dynamic between those up there in the government and then those down here, just the people, and what we choose to understand or what we choose to want to believe is going on here. So let me actually give you a brief synopsis. I have that right here. And Don't Look Up is a film that follows two astronomers who make a shocking discovery. A comet is headed straight for Earth, posing an imminent threat to humanity. As they try to alert the world about the impending disaster, they face skepticism, political agendas, and distractions of society distractions of a society with viral moments. The movie explores the absurdity of media politics and human behavior in the face of an existential crisis. So kind of leans into, what's going on today and how we're dealing with this here. So what do you think about that, Mattel?
I don't have Netflix, but when you told me earlier this was going to be the movie, I watched the trailer. Jennifer Lawrence is an absolute riot in this movie. The movie is quite comical because it is basically a satire of what could go on. Meryl Streep being the president was absolutely perfect. And then of course Leonardo DiCaprio, he's perfect in his role. It is absurd, but the whole point is where there's absurdity and sarcasm, there's truth. It's basically just making fun of what likely would happen. The government would go on with their daily business and try to spin it in a way that they're more concerned about their reelection campaign or this money-making campaign or that.
Right.
So
all the distractions.
Right? Even the part where they talked about in the trailer, they talked about mining the comet for all the money it was worth, which was of course
and that's what they cared about.
Leonardo DiCaprio's like, it's not going to matter. It's going to destroy the planet. What are you guys talking about? But
rather what the end result could be for
the point
humanity,
is that would likely happen and could very well happen. So no, I would when I get the opportunity to see this movie, I'm gonna watch it because
you're missing a good one here.
That's got to be a good one.
Oh my god, and like I said, it just parallels with how most of society hangs on every string and every word that the government gives them. Anything that the government throws in front of their eyes as a distraction, they're looking over there, right? So don't look up, and it's definitely something looking through the lens of today, knowing that what we know about what's going on in our world. And the realities that the things we should be focused on versus the things that they want us to focus on. And that's kind of how that works with science fiction to science fact.
That's what's happening today and what happens in the movie. You nailed it once again.
Definitely. And so, with that being said, we do this for the positive progression of humanity as always. And that's how I'm feeling, Mateo. So, glad to have you back, man. It's been a great show today.
Great to be here. I really
appreciate everybody.
Really enjoyed today's show.
Definitely want to reach out to our comments here. So, Mateo, of course you're here. Magneticus. Maggie M10.
Yes.
And anybody else that watched this live. Derek did stop through.
Derek, I think, is still here.
And anybody,
else.
Anybody who stopped through for the live or who's watching this on Team Rewatch, we do this for the positive progression in humanity and nothing more. We don't do this for fame. We don't do this for notoriety. We do this to talk to the people and give the message to the people. We want to have a conversation with you. That's why we went ahead and opened up the message line. So once again, we'll put that up on the screen. It's 856-843-3444 or 856-THE-DIG. So if you have anything on your mind, any suggestions, you want to make a comment about anything we talked about, you want to tell your story of an experience that you may have had, any of that, just leave it on the line. And then on that following show, we will go ahead and we'll bring that up and make it a part of the show, because we want to include everyone who has come to subscribe here at the Social Dig. And we've had a lot of new subscribers, and we totally appreciate each and every one of you. And we want to make sure that we're serving you the way that you want to be served. So do you have anything to say to them, Mateo?
You said it all, my friend. No, we're all about including everybody here, and everyone knows our mission. In the end, we can make the world a better place in the end here if we can get this information out, and then everyone, and it's been talked about this week too, over the past 2 weeks. If this information gets out in the right way, yes, it can be good, it can be bad, but the goal that we're after is we all realize we're one human family on planet Earth, and we really don't have a lot of differences, and we really need to think like that. And that would change the whole paradigm and where we're all headed. And I think everyone who tunes in here feels the same way and is right there along with us.
And I was actually out of town this weekend up northern California, and I was at the hotel I stayed at, the Marriott, and I just so happened I was sitting outside, just got to the hotel, and this young man who was sitting over on the side came over to where I was at and then just started talking to me, right? And he got to talking about exactly what we do here on the show. I mean, without any prompting or preempting, he dived right into the same message that we promote here on the Social Dig, and it was just like it was a meeting that was meant to happen. A guy not by the name of Antonio, and so Antonio, if you're out there, we're definitely ready to bring you on. So we really you're gonna be surprised when you hear from this young man, Mateo. He has it all together and he understands.
Interesting.
The same message that we push. So
every meeting happens for a reason.
It happens for a reason, man. And I just wanted to shout him out because I'm sure he's watching this episode. So Antonio, we're gonna hook up soon. And outside of that, man, it's been a great show. I'm glad to have my guy Mateo back, man, back in the swing.
Glad to be here, buddy.
And we'll be getting ready for the next show. So make sure you guys, if you haven't subscribed, because once again, I noticed that 50% of the people that actually watch aren't subscribed. So we would love to have you as a subscriber and come in and hit that notification bell so you can join us on the next conversation. And with that being said, it's been a pleasure working with you guys. I appreciate your time. I'm Mr. Rob G. This is the engineer at the Social Dig, Mr. Mateo. And we're out of here, y'all. Thanks.